that was not the original one. Those are the main key challenges identified in my session by the panelists.
Thank you very much. Come back to what they saw as the priorities for action to meet them in a moment, but let's build our picture of the challenges we face. And Nathan, you were talking about social media. In this scenario, I know that the EU IPO has done some work and has analysed social media and IPR infringement. You produced a report on this. What were the key challenges that your speakers identified?
Well, I think one of the key issues that were mentioned. Of course, it depends on the perspective. We had a panel where we had the perspective of law enforcement, of brand owners, and of platforms, social media. So, of course, they each have their own perspective. But I think from a let's say from a brand owner's perspective, there was the issue of the issue of the abuse of the brand to drive traffic to third-party websites that provide IPR infringing content or goods and services was an issue. So there was a call for cooperation is good, of course, and important, and everybody agreed on that. But also it could not stand on its own. It needs to be, let's say, supplemented or strengthened by appropriate regulation and enforcement. I think from an enforcement, everybody, of course, agreed that there are issues that we all know about, such as private groups, closed groups. The use of encrypted communication channels like WhatsApp was a problem, of course. From a Europol perspective, an issue that was mentioned was the harmonization of the differences in legislation among the member states, which makes enforcement in this area difficult. So it was not so much a question of wanting stronger, stiffer penalties, but really more harmonized legislation across the member states.
Absolutely,
in this area.
Which of course was also an issue that came up in our opening panel today, and that relationship between cooperation and regulation. Come back on more detail of where we go from here in a moment. But this issue, Claudia, of multi-platforms and account infringers, talking here about infringers operating using different services, multiple accounts, a variety of online intermediary services. What for you were the most striking challenges that emerged from this discussion?
Thank you, Jackie. We had three panelists that were actually providing the views from the sort of payment perspective, the IP right holders perspective, and also the sort of retail perspective, right, and the marketplace perspective, if you may. And clearly, what has emerged is that we have seen in the latest years, and also recently with COVID and so on, that there is a trend of IP infringers using different ways of promoting their activities, which is making it more difficult to identify them. And that is particularly the case with the use of social media platforms, live streaming videos on marketplaces, and even with the sponsor advertising campaigns that makes more difficult the identification, and of course using these new sort of technologies to even better advertise their fake products. So that is something which is a current challenge. Also, I mean, moving forward, if we look at one expression that was also shared by the audience, it's this idea of having to mop, you see, and connect a lot of dots between different actors, and not always there is this idea of having very clear paths to exchange information and how to gather and ensure that these different information flows can be streamlined and used for the right purpose is not always evident. Also, that involves a lot of resources
Okay.
And that's something to bear in mind. Yeah.
Thank you, which very much links, Marta, to the topic of your panel. And in terms of the priorities for action, I mean, did people identify clear gaps in the data or clear mechanisms that we need to improve that exchange of data? You're muted, Marta. Can you unmute yourself? Sorry, don't worry.
Sorry, this happens. In terms of priorities, the main priority is the sharing of data among all parties concerned. That means private, public, and intermediaries, and to have the right legal basis for that. Also, it was mentioned that right holders need access to data that has law enforcement authorities. Also, it was mentioned the relevancy of the international cooperation and the exchange of best practices at European level and also at international level. And then one of the last priorities that I think all of us we agree is to put IPR as a priority.
Quite simply, yes, you need to make sure this is a priority for everyone. Thank you very much. Nathan, you began to point to some of the areas for action, the need for harmonization, which you underlined and so on. Were there other clear priorities that emerged for you?
Well, I think from really from both the brand owner's perspective and the social media perspective, they need there was certainly an agreement that there has to be more emphasis on knowing your business customer policies. So this was certainly something that came across very strongly from the brand owners, that this is indeed something that needs to be that needs more emphasis. I think that was one finding. Yeah, of course, data sharing cooperation international is of course crucial as well. It was stressed several times, really, by all three panelists that we're talking about crime that is trans-border. I mean, this is by definition international, and so as we also know, we will hear in a moment the presentation of the joint study with the OECD that looks at international trading counterfeit goods. So of course, given that cross-border cooperation, both within the EU, but also with third countries, is very important.
Which was something, of course, we were talking about as well in our first panel today, that this is a global challenge. How do you foster that cooperation internationally as well as within the EU? Claudia, from your perspective and in your session, you talked about what the challenges are. Any clear priorities for action? And perhaps if I could ask you, and I'm going to ask each of you, if out of your discussion you had to pull out one thing that maybe could feed into the preparation of the EU toolbox, what would it be? So Claudia, was there something clear that emerged, or do you see a clear way forward, a key element for the toolbox?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jackie. Yes, I mean, several elements pop out. I think, and some of them have already been mentioned by my colleagues, but definitely getting to know better your customer is linked as well with the necessary empowerment for those actors to ensure that they can actually identify the fraudsters, the ones that are infringing, and identifying their patterns so that they can be kicked out of the sort of marketplaces and other arena. And that also comes linked to this need of ensuring that then there are actions taken to ensure that infringers cannot access again the as I was saying, in the marketplaces. So finding tools to ensure that there is better identification and reaction on that front against infringers. And another comment that was made was, of course, emphasizing on having very much clarity on the rules for all the different interplayers and the different actors. So clear responsibilities for each of the players. And thirdly, as well, the need to ensure that we have tools that are available. And it was, for example, mentioned the enforcement portal, IP portal that EUIPO is developing as a relevant tool to facilitate this exchange of information. So that's certainly something to pick up as well for future work in relation to the toolbox.
Absolutely. And Nathan, any one particular thing, I mean, taking on board that, as was emphasized in our opening session, there is no single action, no one tool, but did something emerge for you as a key priority for the toolbox itself?
Well, I mean, I will echo Claudia in emphasizing the importance of knowing your business customer, or knowing your customer in general. And I will note also that, for example, when it comes to just plain web hosting, there are quite stringent requirements. As the owner of a few websites, I get every year I have to certify who I am and so on. And I think. So I think there's one key takeaway from in that sense, then it would be this.
Thank you very much. Marta, a key takeaway for you, a key element for the toolbox?
From my side, a key next step is that for fighting counterfeiting, we need to connect all the dots. And connecting all the dots means to be able to share the information, the data that private companies, that public authorities and intermediaries has. And for this, we need a clear legal basis.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry we didn't have longer, but you did a great job in summarizing very rich discussions in no time at all. Very, very grateful to you all, and audience, bear in mind, of course, notes. There were people present in each session taking a note of your suggestions, your ideas and your thoughts. So if it wasn't mentioned here, that doesn't mean it has not been captured. I now want to hand over to Nathan, who's going to introduce our next speaker. Nathan.
Okay, thank you very much, Jackie. So now we shift gear a little bit, because in connection with this event, we are launching a new major study on the international trade in counterfeit goods. This study is a product of our cooperation with the OECD that now is in its 6th year. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the 9th joint study we are publishing together. And so obviously it's been a very fruitful cooperation, and the study is available in the main hall in the conference materials chosen. So you can download it right now if you wish. And then with me to present the main results of the study, this will be a very brief presentation, a distillation of what is a substantial document, is Mr. Martin Forst, who is the head of division in the Public Governance Directorate of the OECD. So please, Martin, you have the floor.
So thank you very much, Nathan. Hello to everybody. So I'm of course super pleased to present very rapidly the results of our study, Global Trade in Fakes, a Worrying Threat. So this is already a message in the title, but first of all, let me thank very much the EU IPO, very much the director Paul Meyer, and of course you, Nathan, and your team for this really excellent and so focused and trust-based working together. So as you say, the report we are presenting, it's the 9th report, so we're looking forward soon. We have to have the anniversary of our cooperation. And this is really a clear proof also of this importance on working on data together. So I have just 3 minutes, so I will rush ahead. Again, the message overall, the findings, it's alarming. Counterfeits are really an enormous, simply big, worrying threat. It's this dark side of globalization. Criminals have a lot to gain and they face little risk. And this threat is particularly important, strategic for OECD countries, for EU countries, because they are very advanced, modern, technology-based, and they have a lot of high value-added products, and these are particularly prone. They are particularly vulnerable to the global threat of counterfeiting. So this is confirmed in our report. The vast majority of companies whose IP rights are infringed are coming from OECD countries. So the big victims are here: United States, France, Germany, Italy, Sweden, and others. So just to have a headline number, so the volume in global trade, in the worldwide trade in fake goods, is 400. In this report, we show it's 464 billion dollars. So this is an abstract numbers, but we looked, and it's exactly the GDP of Belgium, the whole GDP of a year. And just the second number is that for the EU, the imports of fakes accounted to 119 billion euros, which is nearly 6% of EU imports, which are simply counterfeit and pirated products. So regarding the products, you can imagine it's typically consumer products, footwear, handbags, cosmetics, toys, etc. Of course, very important, all this business-to-business product area, spare parts, chemicals, and of course the iPhones and chargers and batteries, etc. In short, any kind of product that has a brand will probably be becomes a target for counterfeiters. So, but in addition to this kind of euro volume, we must not forget that in addition there are potentially enormous, no, not potentially, there are enormous threats to health, safety, and environment, etc. In the COVID context, we can all imagine that already now it is starting with the vaccination. That will be huge volume. So these are serious risks. So voila, these are my 3 minutes. The results are alarming. We have all to work together on policy action on the international level to have measures that will actually have an impact. So thank you very much, Nathan, and your team and EUIP. Oh, it was a pleasure again. We're looking forward to the 10th report. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much indeed, Martin, and thank you also to you, Nathan. So that alarming message, just underlining why it is so important, our conversation over these 2 days about strengthening cooperation and identifying those key tools that we need in order to facilitate that cooperation and step up the fight against the infringers. So thank you. Hot off the presses, ladies and gentlemen, new study just published. So great to have you with us, Martin. Thank you again to Nathan and the other chairs of the breakouts, and thank you to all of you and the speakers in those breakouts for your great contributions to our discussion. We're going to take a break now until 2 o'clock. So a little bit of a breather from staring at your screens. We made lunch a little bit longer to give you time to avoid your eyes going square. We'll then come back at 2 o'clock sharp. So please do log on a few minutes before for our second panel on enforcement as a tool to protect sustainability investments. So we've heard already today how this is a pivotal moment for innovation, how innovation is absolutely central to the green transition. We're going to discuss the protections needed to foster those private sector investments that are going to be needed in order to get there. And then we'll end the day with some reflections on what we have heard today from the EU IPO and from the European Commission. So enjoy the lunch break. Thank you again to all our speakers this morning, and thank you to all of you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you back here at 2 o'clock sharp. Thank you very much.